And joining us now on the debate, Glenn Murray, former mayor of Winnipeg, now president and CEO of the Canadian Urban Institute. David Soknacki, chair of Downsview Park and former Toronto City Councillor. Christopher Hume, urban affairs columnist with the Toronto Star. Michael Walker, Toronto City Councillor for St. Paul's. And John Matheson, a principal with Strategy Corp and former Harris government advisor on the creation of this megacity in which our studio sits tonight. Welcome, gentlemen, one and all, to Michael Walker's backyard as well. We're in your riding tonight.
That's right.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Part of the neighborhood.
Backyard.
Just so we're all on the same page and everybody who's watching this understands what we're talking about here, when we talk about a strong mayor system, we're not talking about the actual guy. We're talking about the position. We mean, for example, the mayor of Toronto, who gets elected across the whole city, is actually 1 vote out of 45 on Toronto City Council, whereas in some other jurisdictions, the mayor, in a way, presides like a president, and he can veto stuff that he doesn't like from council and that kind of thing. So that just sets up the discussion. We are having this discussion in Toronto right now, Glenn, because of a new report that's come out recently. Why are we at this again? This seems to be a debate that comes up time after time after time. We're doing it again. How come?
Because I think the city's getting a lot bigger. The economy is changing. Local decisions are now, I would argue, of greater consequence to the success of our economy, given that most of our non-resource revenues are out of urban regional centers. And the expectations that people have for results from local government is higher than it ever has been before.
And those expectations are not being met?
I don't think so. I think that's true in most cities. And also, I think the tax structure of cities, because it's so immediate, the property taxes now have been so over-depended on by so long in this country, much more. I mean, we're twice as our municipalities are twice as dependent on property taxes as municipalities in the States. That people are, and it's such a visible bill, that the fiscal issues that are really coming to the fore are real pocketbook issues that are really frustrating people, and people want to see someone in charge and someone to be held accountable for, and I think they find sort of the loose fish system of a partyless legislature very, very hard to get accountability from.
John Matheson, you watch this stuff a lot. Why do you think we're talking about this again?
Well, I think Glenn nailed it on the head, but I think the real thing comes down to accountability. You know, I think if you go through the process of choosing somebody who you're going to work for as a political activist, build a platform for them, build a campaign for them, go through what's now almost like a whole year of campaigning, you'd like to think that the prize at the end was a politician who was empowered to actually deliver some results.
Not the case?
I don't think so. I think that while some of the tools are there, some more tools are there than used to be there, they're not yet being used effectively. We're not yet expecting them to be used effectively. And so to some degree, the mayor is wearing handcuffs of his own creation. Then there's ones which are still there because of provincial legislation. And I think that the challenges that we face are such that we simply can't afford the old incrementalist type approach, which is what we've gotten out of brokerage politics in a weak mayor system.
We'll talk approaches and how to fix it in a little bit. David, when you were on City Council, you're not anymore, but when you were on it, did you see this kind of difficulty in the mayor's chair while you were there? A mayor who maybe wanted to get stuff done but didn't feel he could?
Steve, I think that I certainly agree with everything that Glenn has said in terms of the challenges, but I really believe that the mayor now has the tools and has the accountability, as John was saying, with what he has now in order to get things done. I mean, take a look at leaving the theory. Let's go down to the practical. Mel Lastman was able to get through Adams Mine. David Miller was able to stop the bridge.
Shipping Toronto's garbage on a train at Kirkland Lake.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what Adams Mine is.
What I'm trying to say is the two most controversial issues, the mayors were able to get through. The converse of that is that Mayor Lastman withdrew a number of motions or a number of ideas because he had the good sense to realize that they weren't going to pass. And I think that that's also the other side of accountability and the other side of municipal democracy. I think that what we saw on the property taxes that lost were, I think, a good example of municipal democracy in action.
Michael Walker, you're on council today. Gauge council for us. How much appetite is there for a strong mayor so-called system that people are talking about?
Well, you've seen the polls, like from the Star, which says about 87% of the people don't support giving any more powers to the mayor. We did a poll in my office, which was 89%.
How'd you do that poll?
We sent out the same question over our website, and we've gotten responses to it. But local government is different than the other levels of government. You want people who are close in elective office, who are close to the citizens, who empower the local citizens in changes that are taking place in their neighborhood, in changes that are taking place in their city. And as David has said, mayors around here have always been able to build the consensus, and that's the role of a mayor and a real leader, is to pull a consensus together around issues, whether it's social housing, whether it's public health, whether it's welfare, whether it's transit, or any other major issues that the mayor of the day is pushing. Mayor Eggleton was extremely successful, 11 years in power. Bland, but successful.
Well, also fair that he had more friends on council than perhaps the current mayor does.
Well, I think this mayor has more than that. Quite frankly, this mayor has a central committee. It's called the Executive Committee, but he owns them. And Mayor Eggleton didn't own them like that. But what he did was he reached a consensus. He made compromises, as David suggested. David Crombie came down and spoke on this issue of centralizing power. And those are the statements that he made. It is the role of a mayor to lead through building consensus around issues, to pull people together and to continue to empower them. If we end up with party politics, which is inevitably it's going to take place, why bother having municipal governments? They're just another replication of provincial governments.
Let me hear from Chris Hume on this. You've watched this from City Hall on both sides.
Well, one thing that everybody here seems to have forgotten is amalgamation. Toronto, that we all, the mythical Toronto we have in our minds doesn't exist anymore. This is a huge city that extends all the way from Etobicoke to Scarborough, 44 members of council, which is completely unwieldy. I personally don't think that the strong mayor is enough. I mean, I think it's one of a number of steps we should take. I think we should have councillors who don't represent a particular ward, as Councillor Walker here does and has for many, many years. I think we need councillors, politicians who think and speak for the whole city. And I don't think we have anybody who can do that yet, except for the mayor. And so I think the mayor needs more power. I mean, I think that we are a big city who still thinks like a small city. Like a small town, maybe. And I think that the reality is getting more and more out of whack all the time. And I see us becoming very risk-averse and afraid of innovation. And city council is sort of, people understand, everybody recognizes it as completely dysfunctional. I think we are in desperate need of change here.
Let me put a couple of numbers to Michael Walker. Do you know how many votes you got in the last municipal election?
Approximately. It was pretty good. It was down from the time before.
You did very well. I mean, you certainly crushed your opponent, and you got about 12,500 votes.
That's right.
Do you know how many the mayor got?
In the whole city?
Yeah.
About 150,000.
David Miller?
330,000. 330,000. Okay.
Why should somebody who gets 330,000 votes only have the same power on city council as somebody who got 12,000 votes?
Because mayors have always been successful in building that consensus. Leadership resides within the individual and in the office they hold. There is an innate respect for the office of mayor and the person who holds it. And people want to support a mayor, most particularly if the mayor reaches out. And that's our tradition. That's what local democracy is about. Centralizing power in the office. If we do this and we carry on, what we should do is have one politician save the taxpayers the money of paying for 44 others. The mayor can meet with Shirley Hoy and other senior bureaucrats and make the decision over breakfast or even when he's having a shower, if he has a system in his bathroom.
Let me find out from, I think you're being facetious. But
I am.
I think so. Glenn, when you were mayor of Winnipeg, how did it work?